Hey guys, Sue's here. Welcome back to another Keto Dinner Ideas video. If you're new here, we make these every single week to give you a little motivation to get in the kitchen and get your keto meal prep on. And we always try to cover 4 different recipes each week. So if you're not subscribed already, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button and join the crew. Let's get into the video. First up, we made a version of Carolyn Ketchum's creamy bacon spinach feta chicken over at All Day I Dream About Food. She's a keto genius. So to start with, I'm using chicken tenderloins instead of thighs, and I'm showing you here how to just take those pesky little tendons out of them. Just get it into the fork tines and press against the chicken as you squeeze and pull that out. If you've never done this before, it's a pretty nifty trick. Takes a little practice to get the hang of it. So I did that to about 1.5 pounds of chicken tenderloins, and then I just put them into a bag, and I'm taking this nifty little meat pounder tenderizer mallet that my daddy actually just sent me because he saw that I did not have one. I've been using jars and rolling pins for all of these years, so very glad to have this. And I am just gently pounding out the chicken a little to get it just a little bit of a thinner, more uniform texture so it all cooks up quickly and evenly. And once I had that done, I stuck it to the side, and I'm taking about 6 slices of bacon, cutting them in the middle. Then I'm just going to slice them again long ways down the middle and chop this up. And then to a large skillet over medium heat, I'm just putting all of my bacon into the pan, and I'm going to fry this up until it gets nice and crispy. And then just removing this with a slotted spoon to a paper towel lined plate to let that grease drain out of it. And I'm trying to leave as much bacon grease in the pan as possible. Now I'm just going to add those chicken tenderloins directly to that bacon grease. And I'm adding a little bit of salt and pepper on this side of my chicken. And I'm just going to cook it for a couple minutes on this side and use some tongs to flip it over. And then I'm also going to add some salt and pepper on this side as well. Cook that for a couple minutes, and I'm going to give it one additional flip after this just to really cook in that salt and pepper that I just added on this side. And after that's all done, I am going to use those same tongs to remove my chicken to a plate because we're going to add it back to a hot sauce later, so I'm not really worried about cross-contamination. Adding a tablespoon of butter to that same pan. And once that melts, I am adding a heaping teaspoon of minced garlic. And I'm just going to cook that in the butter until it's nice and fragrant, about 30 seconds to a minute. And then I'm adding a 5-ounce container of baby spinach. I'm just going to stir that around until it wilts, which happens super quickly. It's always amazing how spinach goes from so big to so little so quickly. And once that's nice and wilted and sauteed, I'm adding a cup of heavy cream as well as a 1/2 cup of grated parm. And I'm just going to mix this all together really well and cook it until it gets a little bit thicker. And once it does, I'm adding my bacon back to the pan and stirring that in. And then I'm also adding my chicken back to the pan. And I'm just going to stir this up until my chicken is all nice and combined. And I'm actually going to bring this to a bubbling simmer, like I said, to just make sure that the chicken is all the way cooked through. And once that's all done, I'm going to cover the top of it with a 1/2 cup of crumbled feta. I did cut the heat off at this point. And I'm just going to spread this evenly on there and let it sit for a couple minutes. And here it is plated. Super delicious. I served it over a little bit of steamed cauliflower rice that I added salt, pepper, and Kerrygold butter to. You should definitely check this one out, as well as everything else on Carolyn Ketchum's website. She is a keto genius. Next up, original recipe. Threw together some pulled barbecue pork with some keto coleslaw. So this is actually based on kind of a word of mouth recipe one of my aunts told me years and years ago when I was a very young college student, and I would just throw this all together in the crock pot and cook it all day long and have enough barbecue meat for sandwiches for the rest of the week. So to start with, I'm taking about 4 pounds of Boston butts pork roast, and this one is boneless, putting it in a crock pot, pouring a cup of white vinegar over it, adding some salt and pepper to it. And I'm not worried about adding salt and pepper to all sides because this is all going to cook down and the seasoning is going to be through all of it. I'm gonna put the lid on and let this cook all day long. You want it to cook at least 8 hours on low for this part of the recipe. So after I get that going for the day, I'm going to go ahead and make my keto coleslaw so that it can kind of, get chilled and the flavors can come together. So to start with, to a bowl, I am adding a cup of avocado oil keto mayo, as well as a tablespoon of granulated swerve, a 1/4 of a teaspoon sea salt, a 1/4 of a teaspoon ground pepper, and a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar. And then I'm just mixing this together really, really well before adding a 10-ounce bag of angel hair, just plain straight cabbage. Now you could definitely spice this up. This is just your very, very basic coleslaw recipe, which is all I was going for here. I don't even really eat coleslaw as much as my husband does, and he's super okay with this simple recipe for it. So once I have that all mixed together, I'm just popping a lid on it, and like I said, I'll just let that sit in the fridge all day while my barbecue cooks. Now once my pork is done in the crock pot, I'm just going to remove it to a bowl and go ahead and drain all of this juice and everything out of the crock pot. Flipping it over, and I'm just going to take my spoon and scrape off the big chunks of fat. I don't really worry myself with getting every bit of the fat off of it because I like a little extra fat in it for flavor and keto, but I am going to go ahead and take the big chunks out. And because we are going to be eating it just as pulled pork tonight, but we're going to be eating it on chaffles for lunch all week, I am taking my mixer and shredding it super quickly that way. I did leave some big chunks in it, but the rest of it I shredded pretty finely. You could use forks for that or meat shredders. Next, I am taking a cup of Louisiana hot sauce. You definitely can modify this, use a milder sauce or less of it if you don't like spicy. I like my barbecue to light me up, so this is very spicy. And another cup of white vinegar. And I'm just going to mix that together really, really well. Pop it all back into that crock pot that I emptied out and let it cook on high for at least another hour to just let all of that sauce cook in there. And then here it is plated up with the coleslaw. And I always like putting a little additional ground black pepper on top of my coleslaw when I serve it. It's just something my mom always did, and I just like the way it looks, honestly. So there you go. This meal is super easy to throw together. You just let it cook all day long. You don't have to worry about it. And like I said, we ate it just like this evening, and then we ate it on chaffles all week for our lunches, and it freezes and stores really well too if you want to double this and make an even bigger roast. Next up, by special request, my husband wanted a ham and broccoli casserole, so I threw this together. It is from a recipe by Peace, Love, and Low Carb. This is actually like a 10 by 13 pan. I sprayed it with some cooking spray, and I'm adding 2 pounds of broccoli that was frozen. I thawed it, drained it, and I'm covering it with about 3 tablespoons of olive oil, a little bit of sea salt, a little bit of ground pepper. I'm going to pop this into a 400-degree oven for 15 minutes for it to roast while I get started on my ham. So taking my digital scale, which I'll link down below, I'm adding about 10 ounces of ham steak. Now, a lot of you might be rolling your eyes like, I don't eat ham on keto, but just look for the lowest carb ham that's not cured with sugar and use that. But if you're adamant about not eating ham on keto, you could totally make this recipe with diced chicken or turkey. So I'm taking the ham and just cutting it into slices, and then I'm going to dice it up into about 1/2-inch pieces. So to a large saucepan over about medium heat, I am adding 4 ounces of cream cheese. Once that starts melting a little bit, I am adding 1/2 cup of heavy cream to that, 1/4 cup chicken broth, and then I'm adding a cup of shredded extra sharp cheddar cheese and a cup of shredded mozzarella cheese, a heaping teaspoon of minced garlic. And I'm just going to mix this all together over medium heat until it all melts and combines. And this is the texture it should look like, nice and melty and stretchy and yummy looking. And here's my roasted broccoli out of the oven. You can see it's still pretty firm. I'm going to top that with all of our diced up ham and then also pour cheese sauce over it. And I'm just going to use the spoon to mix that together to make sure all of our broccoli is nice and covered with that cheese. And once I get it mixed and then evened back out, I'm going to top this with an additional cup of extra sharp cheddar cheese and pop this back into the 400-degree oven for 20 minutes. Here's what it looks like when it comes out. And here it is plated up. My husband really loved this. This was primarily for him. I did try to serve it to my toddlers and they were not digging it, which I was surprised at. But maybe you'll have better luck with it with your kids because it is definitely a kid-friendly keto recipe. Lastly, this week I threw together another original recipe. It's kind of my version of a keto Italian sausage primavera without all of the extra stuff. And so to start with, I took a medium zucchini, washed it, got all of the yucky parts off of it, cut it down the middle lengthways, and then I am just slicing it up into half moons along with a red bell pepper. And you can just slice that in half and pop the seed pod right out of the top of that. And I'm cutting the bell pepper up into kind of sizable chunks. I didn't want it to be too finely diced, more chopping it. And once I have my veggies cut up, I'm adding them all to a large mixing bowl, along with a heaping teaspoon of minced garlic, 1/4 cup of extra virgin olive oil, and mixing that all together until everything is nice and coated with the garlic and oil. To that, I'm adding 1/4 teaspoon ground black pepper, 1/4 teaspoon sea salt, and 1/4 teaspoon onion powder. I actually used a little bit coarser onion powder, granulated onion for this recipe. Mixing that all together. Sticking that to the side, getting started on my Italian sausage. Now these are mild Italian sausage links I buy at Costco. They have less than 1 gram of carbs per link. Anytime you're using any type of processed meat, make sure that you check it to make sure there's no added sugar. And again, if you're an anti-processed meat person, just go ahead and use chicken or something for this recipe. So I'm just dicing this with the casing on and sticking that to the side, getting my veggies, putting them onto a cookie sheet that is rimmed and lined with nonstick foil, spreading those out evenly, and then I am just going to stick my sausage on top of that, and I'm adding this to a 400-degree oven for 30 minutes. Meanwhile, trying something new today that I've never tried before is this pasta zero spaghetti. It is shaped shirataki, and it says that you can just drain this and rinse it and eat it straight out of the bag. This we found in the refrigerated section at Walmart. Here are the macros for this. If you want to take a look at that, comment down below if any of you have used this. If you are not a fan of using this, you can absolutely serve this meal over cauliflower rice or just as is. Here are what the noodles look like after they are drained and rinsed. Just kind of wanted to show you the texture. Like I said, you can just eat them straight out of the bag after rinsing them, but I didn't feel totally comfortable with that because it's my first time eating them, so I am parboiling them by just dumping them in water and boiling them for 2 minutes and then draining them. And here is my sausage and veggie combo out of the oven. And here it is plated up. Now, I think the serving size for the shirataki pasta is like 2/3 cup. I used half of that portion size for mine and not even a whole Italian sausage link, and a nice amount of veggies, topped it with shredded parm, and there you have it. That's this week's Keto Dinner Ideas video. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends who are trying to follow a keto diet and live a keto lifestyle, and make sure you're subscribed to our channel with all of your little notification bells on so you never miss one of our weekly Keto Dinner Ideas videos. Till next time, bye guys.
Heading back to what used to be home, passing by those little towns I know so well, stopping for gas and then I'm behind the wheel again. Driving is like a spiritual cleanse.